Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for another Film Roundtable. My name is Maria Prieto, and I'm here to introduce our panelists as well as our special guest moderator today. But before we start, I'm going to lead us through a moment of silence to honor all of the reported worldwide deaths as of today, which is January 21st, 2021. And that number is 2,082,605 worldwide deaths. We'd also like to honor all of our Black and Brown brothers and sisters, as well as our First Nations brothers and sisters, whose lives have been taken by the hands of police brutality and other senseless acts of violence. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Taking that time to just really remember that we're still in the midst of this pandemic. It's important for us. It's important to be aware of how safe we have to be, about compassionate we have to be towards one another. And it's just an important message for us at Film Roundtable to really start off with. So with that, I'd like to introduce our talk today. We have joining us editor William Goldenberg, who has led an incredibly prolific career editing films for directors such as Michael Bay, Kathryn Bigelow, Ben Affleck, and Paul Greengrass, most recently for this year's News of the World. He's been nominated 5 times for the Academy Award and 1 for Argo. So welcome, William. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Applause, because we don't have an audience live, but I'm sure they'd be clapping. Also joining us today is cinematographer Dariusz Wolski, one of the world's leading cinematographers, helming projects alongside Ridley Scott, Rob Marshall, Tim Burton, and Paul Greengrass as well for News of the World this year. So Dariusz, thank you as well for joining us.
Thank you.
And finally, we have cinematographer Nico Aguilar, who you guys might recognize as a frequent panelist on these roundtables. And today he's flipping the table and he's going to be moderating. So Nico, welcome back and thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much, Maria. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys so much for being here.
Nico, before I hand it off to you, I just want to thank our listeners for their continued support for this platform. And I just want to remind everyone to subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Instagram, follow us, be up to date on all of our upcoming talks. All right, Nico, off to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Maria. So first of all, I want to say how much I enjoyed the film, and both of your work on the film is really incredible and really special. We're living in a really momentous time right now in history, as you guys know, and there's divide, there's pandemic and violence. Would you agree that this film is very timely to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it got more timely as we went on. I think we knew that it was going to be timely based on divisiveness in the world and, 5 years after the Civil War. And obviously the same is true for right now. And as we went along in the post-production process, the pandemic, came into our lives and it was another parallel to what was happening at that time. So it became more and more relevant as time went on, as we were finishing the film.
Yeah, and I think. Oh, sorry.
I think it was Paul's intentions from the beginning. My first conversation with Paul about the project there was this intention to create this, whatever the story is, that the background is divisiveness. The country, that it's in a very, very peculiar time of history. Yeah.
Yeah, because narratively, there's scenes that are very shocking that I think are also very relevant socially. But I wanted to talk that one of the biggest similarities between an editor and a cinematographer is the importance of building a strong relationship with the director to understand his or her vision and form the foundation for creativity and effective collaboration. Dariusz, I understand this is your first collaboration with director Paul Greengrass, but you've both come from the world of working on big action-driven narratives. Did you find you were quickly creatively aligned from the beginning?
Yes. And even though we come from a little bit different worlds, but because action is such a broad term, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, there's an action element in all the movies I've done, but also there are other elements that I think I pride myself a bit more than action.
Yes.
But you know, Paul is very comfortable with action stuff. He's done, you know, Bourne and all these films. I've done some stuff with some action, but I think more important was just to find a language for the film that I haven't done a Western, he hasn't done a Western. So that was the most important, the most interesting part of the whole thing. You know. We knew there's some shootouts and stuff, but just to find a modern look at the Western as a genre was the biggest challenge, and combine Paul's relentless documentary approach to filmmaking, and I think I just brought something else just to make it a little bit bigger than just, you know, chasing somebody with a camera. So even though the whole movie was shot handheld.
Yes, yes. And I noticed that you didn't use any cranes, and that you sort of used, as you're saying, a more contemporary look through sharper glass. What was the sort of mentality behind that decision making?
Just, I think it's really nice to restrain yourself. You know, it's like when you do big action movies that take forever, you have every possible tool available, and it's just nice to be restrained. You know, you just make it, everything becomes more personal and more, you know, better observed, and also was just probably playing against cliches. I think there were two cliches that we successfully avoided. I avoided the crane, and Paul avoided the bar scene. Every Western has to have a bar scene, and the location we were at, there was of course a bar because there are all those old sets that we revamped to create, you know, different things. So of course there was I think the last time this bar was used was in one of the Coen Brothers films. I'm not sure. So anytime we walked in this place, Paul said, no, I don't want to shoot in a bar. But we needed like a kind of town hall place for Texas. So, and he was adamant, this is not going to work. And eventually production designer and I said, listen, just get rid of the bar. It's a great space. So we took the bar out, and that's the scene when Tom has his speech in Texas, in Dallas. So that's the bar that is not a bar, yeah. The original was a bar, but here we go. But there was no bar in the whole film.
It's so effective. I couldn't even tell that was.
No, we just took the bar out. It was just a space. All I'm saying is there were two cliches we tried to avoid. You know, no bars and no cranes, which are, you know, kind of essential for all the Westerns.
And I want to talk a little bit something you touched upon, which is I understand that Paul Greengrass has, you know, he has this whole beginning out of journalism and documentary world. He went to places where there was a lot of conflict, and he spent about a decade doing that. And in interviews, he talks about how much it affected his own aesthetic. And I know, Dariusz, that you got your start doing BBC documentaries as well. Is that true?
That is true, but you know, my BBC documentary career was as a camera assistant or electrician. So all I was to do is put a couple of redheads and light up the interview. Nevertheless, it was an incredible education, because BBC opens the door to places you would never encounter. You just do interviews with politicians, scientists, artists, writers, actors. So it was just more of an overall education into the world.
Yeah.
But in terms of style, no, that had nothing to do with it.
Do you feel like
I was never in a combat zone with
yeah,
missiles flying over my head, hanging on to Arafat. Paul has a lot of great stories like that. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Nevertheless, I was always fascinated by documentaries. I think my visual style is drawn from strong still photography, that it's reportage photography, that it's, that basically somebody walks into some place and takes a shot with a beautiful light coming through the window, and it is documentary. He just happened to have a great eye and captured beautifully. So that's my fascination with documentary, watching a lot of street photography, National Geographic photography. I mean, Chris Manges in Killing Fields, he comes from strong documentary. I mean, that was incredibly beautifully stylized movie, but had a very strong documentary feel to it. So that's my approach to documentaries, yeah, to understanding the world through whatever you can say, documentary.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I know exactly what you mean.
It's because it's tricky. The minute you point the camera, it becomes objective. So, you know, I might a little differ with Paul about that, you know, because
Yeah, I'm curious because I know that type of aesthetic certainly influenced the planning of this film, and it also influenced how perhaps it was edited.
Well, yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, like you say, Paul's style has shifted slightly. I mean, this is my second film with Paul, and 22 July being the first, we're sort of halfway between. And he wanted, I've heard him, you know, in interviews say he wanted to slow down a little bit. And so that film is shot, you know, it's all handheld, but it's a little more traditional angle wise. You know, there's over shoulders and two shots, and you know, which normally he doesn't even have any of that. It's just all sort of feels very grabbed. And so News of the World was even less so. He wanted, you know, and I was always very cognizant of, and the discussions we have, he wanted the environment to be a character in the film. So I was always very cognizant of that as I was cutting, you know, to keep that in mind all the time. And by, you know, talking to Paul over and over and over, you know, every day of the, you know, the shoot and every day months before, sort of you get this, you know, transference of thought, you know, where you feel like you're now he's floating around in your head, you know, everything he said. So you, as you're cutting, those things come back to you, and you know, what he's going for, what's, you know, stylistically he's going for, what emotionally he's going for. So it was over a long period of time, many discussions to sort of get his aesthetic and what he was trying to go for in my head.
And what's interesting is I understand that he brought you in super early in the process too.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately for me, it's the first time I've ever been involved on that level. I mean, because we stayed in contact since 22 July. I knew that he was going to use me on his next film. So when he got the book and the original screenplay, he sent it to me before he even started writing to read the script and also the book, which I thought both were very, very good. But I knew he would take the script a little into a little different place. We talked about what those things were, and you know, he let me read outlines early on, early versions of the script, and I even got to go to London for a couple of weeks last summer, the previous summer, the summer before we shot, and you know, went through the script with him and his development person, you know, page by page, and talked about everything. So I mean, it's not like I had any great hand in writing the screenplay, but I at least always looking at it from an editorial point of view. That's kind of what I tend to do when I'm in meetings with directors, because I usually meeting the directors very close to the beginning of production, and you know, the script is the script at that point usually. So I talk about it more in terms of from an editor's point of view strictly, so that I can, you know, that's what I'm going to be contributing. So I figure that's the one I should speak to. So yeah, it was a real gift to be able to do that, and mostly what it did for me was have, you know, all these long discussions Paul and I would have about the script and the story. Really, again, like I said earlier, had a great impact on my deep understanding of what he was going for.
Yeah.
And then even along the way, you know, he was constantly rejiggering, rewriting, and you know, the ending of the film changed several times, Dariusz knows, and it was great to be involved in those discussions. You know, and Paul, you feel like you're more of a sounding board. You know, I think it helps him to have somebody to talk with, and he makes his own decisions, takes the suggestions he likes. You know, but he has a firm handle on what he's going for. But so it was just great to be that sounding board, you know, and have a small contribution.
But I think as an artist, you know, he has absolute right. He was constantly searching, which is wonderful. You know, it's not like just having a script and check scene number 5. He was constantly searching, trying to find something different, trying to improve it, make it better, which is a true creative process. Yeah.
I agree. It's how whenever I think of Orson Welles and Citizen Kane, I remember reading about how every single day he would come on set, he would change something, or he would be relentless in the process. And William, I heard you mention that the ending went through a lot of changes. Dariusz, could you speak a little bit more about that?
From like a set perspective was great, because we shot this quite beautiful scene, and actually it looked quite nice and everything was great. And then like halfway through it, Paul comes up, he says, he looks at the page, takes his time. And I know there's something, because there was a scene in original ending was a scene that he's reading, and he finds her that she actually found him. That in the speech, all of a sudden she comes up and she says a dime, or this kind of. And so we're doing this, and halfway through he stops, and she's just like, "This is just not going to work. This is just everything is fine, coverage technically we all get all great, looks good, and Tom is great." And let's just forget about it. Let's just go outside, shoot one of those other scenes when he's contemplating sunset by himself. Very simple, so we're just gonna shoot something. And then next day he comes with completely different rewrite, completely different concept. And that was it. And it's very powerful. Yeah, everybody, it's in the beginning you have to get used to it, because like, what is he doing? Why is he doing that? But because if you program on the schedule when you're making a film, technically you're just in the rhythm, you have everything figured out, you just want to get it done, and it puts you a little off guard. But then you think about it, which still me and my crew guys were saying, is he right? Is he doing it? He did it, and it works, and it's beautiful. Yeah, it's great.
He did the same sort of thing on 22 July, so I was a little more used to it, where he would, almost rewrite, and these were Norwegian actors. I mean, they all speak English there, but they, it's not their first language. And he rewrote pages almost every night before shooting, and would hand the actors new pages. And I think we've never really talked about it like specifically, but my feeling is I think he feels like he keeps the actors on their toes, so it doesn't feel too rehearsed. It feels like fresh and new. And I find also that he likes to add a little extra dialogue. And I would constantly say to him, like, well, you don't need those lines, looking at the pages. And he'll say, I know, but you cut it out. I'd rather shoot you cut it out. And I think that he gives at least from my point of view, it gives the actors more like meat to grab onto. So especially short scenes, where they'll shoot them a little longer and I can cut them down, but the actors have something so they can get into it and really be immersed in it, as opposed to, 4 lines and you're out. They'll do 12 lines and I'll cut 6 of them out, So yeah, I think it's a great technique. But also it's great that he has the objectivity to see something isn't working while it's happening. And that is a unique gift.
Yes.
Because usually what'll happen, I think you'd agree, is I'll shoot it, you get it, it's not going to work, and then you got to go back 6 months later and pick up an ending after you've previewed. And he's able to he's able to maintain his distance and step back and take a look at things like that. And it's a unique skill, and I wish every director had.
And I think I really admire it too, because to step away from the momentum of what's going on set and in the process is something incredibly hard. Dariusz, I'm curious to hear if you've had any moments in your career where you felt like you needed to step away from a creative direction for the best of the film.
I think all the time, yeah.
Okay, good.
Pretty much, that's why I could relate to Paul so easily, because everything is a creative process. Everything is, in his case, he's telling the whole story. So it's dialogue, it's how it's going to be edited, performances. Like with me, even when it comes to lighting, I'm just famous from turning lights off. God, this is just too much. This is not working.
And
but
do you? Yeah,
but that's it's a creative process, and pushing it as hard as you can. This is going to work, and some of it doesn't. Some of it doesn't, but it's okay, because we're not perfect. If we do everything that's safe, it's just not going to be. It's going to look good, but it's not going to be interesting,
Have you
So
ever
you always, I've been fired from movies for that too, so
Yeah.
so it just makes you a bit of a thick skin, and but that's how you push your skills, or whatever, your creative mojo, whatever that is. Yeah.
I agree. Have you ever had to recommend to a director to sort of leave a scene if something's not working, more from a creative sort of general standpoint, not just from your department?
Yeah. I mean,
Really?
I had a conversation with Paul about the movie. Several. Sometimes I speak truth a little too strong, but right. Not.
And you had a
course,
moment like this?
I have my ideas about, everyone gets involved in the project, we care, so that's where it comes from, because we care about the story and stuff. So if certain things are missing and they're not just done perfectly, you always.
And I think
with all directors, I mean, I'm just lucky to work with really talented people that they don't feel threatened by that, because sometimes directors are some kind of overpowering cameraman. You have to be very careful about that. But all directors I work with are so strong and so set in their ways, so they appreciate it, actually. Yeah, it doesn't bother.
I think you're bringing about something that's so important for our listeners to understand, which is that I think what makes both of you so talented and so good at what you do is that you're not just doing your job, you're looking over the story and the script, and your collaboration goes beyond sort of your job description. I think that filmmaking has very specific roles and everyone's very specialized, but I found, at least in my experience as a filmmaker, that to truly make a story work, you need to care about every aspect of the story.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I understand why, because you can just sometimes you get caught up with some pretty picture. You let, that's so pretty, and director says, no,
exactly.
It's like, oh my God, but it looks so. You just have to throw it away, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't. It's not. I don't think that photography is just about pretty pictures. It's about understanding the story and make images interesting that they complement, interpret.
Yes, I agree. So, and not only as a cinematographer, do you sometimes have to stray away from doing just aesthetically beautiful things for the sake of the story?
Absolutely.
But I imagine that as an editor, you also have to make choices in the editing room that might not favor the most beautiful shot, but favors a shot that's going to further the story.
Absolutely. Yeah, all the time. I mean, although the great thing about working with people like Paul and Dariusz is they're shooting shots for a reason that tells the story, that is helping tell the story. So in general, those things sort of go hand in hand with what I choose. With lesser experienced people, sometimes, yes, you have a pretty picture, but it's not telling the story. So you end up using something that the DP might like a little less image-wise, but it's telling a better story. Like I said, the great thing about, I've been lucky, especially in the last bunch of years, to work with really skilled people who are at the top of their craft. So you get beautiful images that also tell the story. So it makes it a little easier. You have the best of both worlds. So thank you, Dariusz.
And not only that, but you've also worked with cinematographers that prefer single camera, such as Roger Deakins, and then other cinematographers that work with multiple cameras on the same shoot. And Dariusz, you've also worked on films that I'm sure have used multiple cameras, but also I'm sure you've worked on films that just use a single camera. And I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are and how that affects the creativity of a project.
I did my third movie in my career was Ridley's brother Tony, and I was very young, and I jumped in the big water, and we were in the submarine, and we were shooting three cameras, and I was tearing my head. And after I finished the film, it's like, one day I'm just gonna make a movie. I'm gonna operate myself, single camera. It's gonna be so great. You know what? It never happened. It never happened. So I maybe envy Roger, but
Yeah.
that he's managed to control the whole thing. But from another perspective, it's like, you know, Paul is basically because Paul loves Steadicam handheld narration from one point of view. So we had two cameras, but one camera narrates the story. I mean, going to Ridley that I work with, he uses 4 cameras all the time. But he's one of those people who can really design a scene that basically when we're rolling, we're cutting it. I mean, he basically cuts in his, while he's watching it. A camera, okay, give me this camera, no, it's this camera. So, but it's a different way of telling the story because he captures the thing, you know. And it requires quite a skill. It's just like another level of thinking, you know, because you just have to also make it look interesting. And I would never do this with any of the other directors because they would be just lost. They wouldn't be able to comprehend that thing. I did a movie with some other directors. Ridley Scott, how's it going? Yeah, one camera. And Ridley said, I would shoot myself with one camera because his brain is going so fast. He has to go. But with Paul, it was great because when we did this, when we did all the speeches, all the readings, we start with 2 cameras, and it immediately became obvious we need 3 cameras for that because it's pretty stationary set up. You have him in one place, so it's good to shoot 3 sizes from different angles, and because the speeches were way longer than they appear in the film, it was exhausting for Tom. So for him to just do it, you know, 5 times instead of 25 times, if you had to move camera to get different angles, I mean, that just really helps actors, you know, and also gives Bill, I'm sure, gives you also possibilities to cut, you know, in the same time from one place to another and just not worry about it's going to match or not. So I think that helps editors too. I mean, Paul, I don't know how do you feel about it?
Oh, yeah, no, for me, I mean, it's like you say, in the hands of skilled directors and cameramen, you get 4 angles. You know, when I worked on Kathryn Bigelow, the first film, 6 cameras on everything.
Yeah.
And then on Detroit, it was 4 cameras on everything. But, you know, the DPs and Kathryn are so skilled that you get 4 good storytelling angles and a lot
That's right.
And then you get a lot of other little bits and pieces and detail that you might not get. So I love having more coverage than less, because especially with these speeches, the readings that Tom did, they're long, the takes were long. So you get a ton of footage, but you don't get that many angles. And you know, you think, oh my God, I have 7 hours, 8 hours of footage. Yeah, but I only have like 7, 8 angles too. So it's really hard to put a long scene together and make it interesting when it's just, you know, a limited number of angles. So when I have more material that is given to me by somebody who knows what they're doing, it's sort of counterintuitive, but the more the better, because I have options. You know, there's ways out of scenes, there's ways into scenes, there's making moments that weren't there, you know. But when you have just a limited amount of coverage and it's very straight, it's hard to make something out of nothing. You know, it's hard to reinvent a moment or invent a moment that didn't exist. So yeah, I love it with lots and lots of footage. It takes time to go through, but you end up with such a better film and so many more options, and you get a richness in the film too with all that material.
And also, I want to give credit to operators, because if you have creative operators, of course, there's a camera, whatever, A, B camera that capture essentials, but there's always this extra camera who like, I don't have a great angle, but then maybe I'll just go somewhere there, you know, and they take initiative. It's like, oh, fuck, this is great. I never thought of it. You know, it's like, absolutely, you know.
Yeah, no,
I always encourage them to, as long as we get the gist of things that's necessary for you, then when you see something, some details, something, when you have extras, you have beautiful faces, you have stuff like this that it's better to capture when they don't know they're being photographed than turn around, look at them, and then, you know, the magic is gone.
Yeah, no, all that kind of stuff is like, to me, I mean, I love, you know, I work with people like Kathryn and Ben and Paul. a similar put you in the room with them kind of feeling, and that material, all that material is really makes that happen for me, you know, to have all that detail, and it gives it flavor and like a richness and a depth that you can't substitute for.
Yeah.
But due to respect, you know, the single camera narrative, if it's really cleverly designed, like what Roger does, what Spielberg does, what Polanski does, you know, that just this one camera, that tells the story, you know, it's a beautiful style of working, you know, and I'm not taking this down too. It's just there's just two ways of telling the story, way more than two, but you know, these are two dramatic ways.
Yeah,
dramatically different ways. Yeah.
Were there any scenes, Dariusz, that you felt changed a lot from when you conceptualized them and sequenced them in your brain to how William approached them in the editing room?
Well, he got rid of a lot of scenes that kind of were not great. I'm grateful to him. Well, they were just, I mean, thank God they were just like making movie too long, and we had some, you know, light problems and stuff, you know, it's as usual. But so that was a big saving grace. I think that, you know, the movie went through a lot of stages, but Bill found like a, you know, it's really beautiful structure basically appeared after you put everything together, because there was a little bit of, it was way too much. That's what you said, Paul does. Was more than we needed, and some stuff was, some stuff I'm missing, but you always do. But the whole core, the structure of the film is very coherent and very, very simple, and that's the most important thing, to find simplicity when you're telling the story.
No, it's absolutely
with everything, with performance, with editing, with photography. When you look at great things, they're just simple, you know.
Yeah, and always the solutions to the problems usually the simple, like not to overcomplicate it. The simple solutions are usually the best solutions, you know.
And you did a great job finding that, you know. Really, yeah, great.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're talking about, the process before. I mean, that's why, first of all, it's why there's a director and an editor and not just one person doing it. And also, it takes time, like the expression that Carol Littleton, the woman who cut E.T., uses, you can never know in week 1 what you're going to know in week 10. So you get to, you know, it sort of evolves, you know. That's why the process is the process. You can't do it you could cut something in a weekend, but it's not going to be as good as it would have been if you took 3 months to cut it.
Yeah,
you start understanding the story in a deeper way, and you see what's repetitive, and you see how to simplify things, and it just, those things have to reveal themselves, and it takes a minute.
Yeah.
And I think a good example of that is how you guys approached the action sequences when in the film. That one scene when you have the shootout, and I understand that second unit was also involved in the planning or the execution of it. But usually you have second unit perhaps working prior, so that then you know sort of what to shoot for first unit. How did that work out, and how was
I think it's the other way around. The first unit should leave the stamp, and then second unit cleans it up. Yeah, that's otherwise. Yeah, that's how I've always done that way. The first unit comes in. Of course, those big action movies, you know, like whatever, Fast and Furious. That's completely different set of skills, which I can't comprehend. You know. When you have a huge unit, someone in Thailand and someone in Pinewood on the gimbal is shooting dialogue, you know. But what we did, the most important thing was actually finding a proper location, and we took a long time to find a good location. And there was one incredible one, but we couldn't go there because there was the Native American territory. There was a lot of artifacts. We couldn't go there, and then we had this logistic problem that you have a wagon that's going up the hill and then is going really up and breaks. And then you want to have a spectacular, you know, rock formation cliffs. Unfortunately, the road never goes that steep, so you have to cheat it. We have to find one location for the wagon goes as high as it can, then breaks down, and then just carry the wagon to the higher space and shoot the whole thing in a place that's way more spectacular, dramatic. And in the end, the best location was found by our stunt people, by our stunt team. They finally found it.
Oh, wow.
We went over and over and over and this and that, and this was okay. This could have worked. That was all right. And that was also, Paul was relentless about keep looking. And then we decided to there. And I think most of the stuff we shot ourselves. I mean, because all the stuff was with Tom and Helena, we did ourselves. It was a great location. It was just a great location. And the great thing is that there's very few bullets because they don't have a lot of bullets, you know. So it's not one of those relentless shootouts when people, you know, just with Uzis that they fire for half an hour and they never run out. Or 6 shooters that have 20 rounds, you know. So that also added to drama. So that was, and the whole story was a dime, you know, with running out of bullets and the gun that it's like a bird shot. There's the whole thing that played from the beginning of the film and paid off. And just clever.
So William, I know you were very involved with the second unit of shooting of these action sequences. And I also want to hear a little bit about how you can edit a scene, an action-driven scene, so that it also feels important for the story.
Well, that's the most important thing always. You know, great action scenes to me, you know, are always story driven. You know, you can have a lot of the eye candy and car crashes and whatever, but if the story doesn't advance and the characters' story doesn't advance and their emotional story doesn't advance, then it's just, you know, you're back where you started, you know. So the most important thing is that Paul wrote it with a story in it, and you know, it's important, obviously, incredibly important for their relationship. It's where they become a team. You know, and he realizes just the depth of her intelligence. And so, you know, early in my career, I did this film called The Long Kiss Goodnight. And I made Gina Davis in that film so evil, you know, that she was unlikable. And we previewed the film, and then it sort of came, you know, I realized that you have to make the characters accessible, even when they're like the bad guys, you know. So it's always about characters and what they're going through and you know, emotionally and obviously story wise. So that I always lean into that as much as I can, you know, and try and bring out, especially a film like this, which is you know, it's obviously a period film, but it's reality based. It's not, you know, I've done some Michael Bay films where it doesn't quite matter, you know, in terms of what the characters are going through. They're robots, you know, so it doesn't really matter, although it matters a little in those films too. But yeah, so I'm always thinking story, and you know, then obviously you want to make it exciting, you want to make it dramatic, intense, but that often comes from the reaction of the actors. You know, it's looking at their faces, seeing them in jeopardy, seeing how they feel about certain things, the desperation. Those are the things that make the rest of it sing to me. So I'm always hanging on to those moments and looking for those moments to you know, bring the audience into the characters. And you know, there was plenty, you know, Tom and Helena, their nonverbal acting is so good that it was, you know, a lot of that was, you know, a gift to me that they had actors like that, you know, you didn't have to manufacture it. It was there, you know, so it was just, you know, sort of staying out of their way and trying to find the right pieces to express certain emotions. So it was, you know, it's a credit to Paul's screenwriting, really, or any screenwriter who writes a good action scene. Again, it's like if there's a story being told, it's dramatic, it makes that action scene twice as good to me.
I think it's important. It's like in action scenes, it's what's in stake. That it's not just gratuitous, just people killing each other because they just, one guy is a bad guy, one guy is a good guy or something. Yeah. When there's a stake, when there's something they're fighting for, that's what makes it more interesting, you know. And that's what was in this film.
Yeah, and Paul actually added some stuff with Almay, the bad guy, you know, the main bad guy. I mean, he was obviously a soldier that had been feels like he was let down by his, in this case, the Confederacy, I mean, he says when they're walking and talking, and he's, trying to, get Tom to give him the girl, and he talked about, poor men fighting a rich man's war, which is sort of what happened in the South. If you owned a certain amount of property or a certain amount of slaves, you didn't have to go to war. It was only the poor men who were fighting. And he's this disgruntled, guy looking for, a slice of the pie for himself. So there's dialogue in there. Aren't you just sick of, all this stuff? And that he added that on the day, and it makes his character have some depth. You understand where he's coming from, so you don't just see him as some, guy twirling his mustache. He's a real guy with real problems, and I think that kind of stuff always makes the conflict better.
It's true.
And I really like one thing that you're mentioning, which is the concept of bringing reality into fantasy. Dariusz, one thing I loved that you did in Dark City, 1998, by Alex Proyas, was that you're one of the first people to use sodium vapor lights, and you did it in a way that brought reality into this fantasy world. And I know that for a period piece, that's important because you want to ground the audience. I'm curious, how were you able to bring some reality into this world from your department and perspective?
Just to be as true to, to what this world looked like, like if the nights were all done with, I mean, not all of them, but as much as I could with the real hurricane lamps. I mean, unfortunately, Universal didn't allow me to use them all because they considered it being a hazard. So I had to electrify all the ones in the background, because they were afraid we're going to put the locations on fire. But everything that was immediately lighting them was the real flame light.
Wow.
So I mean, that's what I've done. I've done this even way before digital technology was, with like pirates and stuff. Always fascinating. We all grew up on Barry Lyndon. So if you're a cinematographer, your dream is to shoot Barry Lyndon. Thank God. And it's kind of cheating now because technology is so good that you don't need a special lens and just whatever incredible amount of candlelights and mirrors and stuff. But he was the first one, so it's like an initiation. So I started on pirates and moved on to a whole bunch of period movies. So this was just like another extension of it. It was great. And our prop guy found this beautiful hurricane lamp with this little magnifying glass in the middle that, when you look at all the close-ups, when Tom is reading, it just has this beautiful shape and stuff. It was really nice.
Yeah.
And even the
magic hour and stuff, just trying to,
yeah,
bit nerve-wracking, but it worked in him.
I can imagine. Even the beginning, when you have a day exterior scene, I really appreciated the fact that you could have very easily put in 20 overheads and made the light super soft, but in a way I saw that you made the choice to embrace the hard light of the middle of the day, because it makes you feel like you're in the middle of the day in the sun, and the elements are harsh, and it's this whole thing, when you're becoming a cameraman, you just wanted to have everything perfect, so you end up, and then you have more money, so you end up having a big crane, you silk everything, and everything matches perfectly, and then you look at it, okay, matches, and what? That's boring. Yeah.
So that's why I always love to play with real nature, just capture the way it is. And even if it doesn't match here and there a little bit, it's more interesting than just to, turn some lights on in a cloudy day and light something up or silk this, it's just, I mean, of course you do this here and there when it's a real problem, but when it gets too far, but always try to go with real light. Again, going back to Ridley, he's the man who's done millions of commercials, and he moves so fast that you can really shoot the sunset 4-page scene in 2 hours. Yeah.
Wow.
And I've done that, and there was like, there was, for the one movie we were supposed to shoot at night, Ridley said, "Look at this, it's beautiful." I said, "Yeah, it is. So let's shoot it now." I said, "But Red, it's 4 pages. Don't worry about it."
Wow.
And you do it. I mean, everyone, of course, everyone tenses up. Actors tense up. Everybody, and you get it done. And we did few of them like this in our film, few of them that way. But it's always nerve-wracking, and it's always. But we did it. Yeah, it's great, and it's just a great time of the day. Everybody, you set it up, you prepare, and you go, and it's a little bit like shooting a live performance. That's it. It's gonna be over in 20 minutes, an hour. If you didn't get it, you didn't get it. So that's what makes our life more exciting.
I agree with that completely. And
we had some issues. We had some issues because Paul wanted to reshoot one of the scenes, not reshoot, just reshoot half of it. And Magic Hour 1 was beautiful, blue sky, and another one was cloudy. So, but then you go to our fantastic Stefan Nakamura, and you just do a bit of a tweaking and try to match. Stefan Nakamura is my digital DI colorist, who you owe him a lot too.
Yeah, he's terrific.
Yeah. So, but it's better to take a chance than not to, or shoot the scene during the day. How boring would that be? I'll be perfect matching.
The benefit of being an editor is you get to make a lot more mistakes. And if you're a director of photography, you can say it's magic hour and you're trying to grab a scene and you do something. It's I could screw things up over and over and over again, and then just
go back,
undo, and it's like start fresh. So I get to be wrong a lot. So
that's not fair. That's not fair.
It is what it is.
No, well, I was going to say that one of my favorite scenes that you've edited, William, is in Argo, 2013, a film by Ben Affleck. And it's the beginning sequence when the protesters are storming the consulate. And you actually mix 8mm footage that was shot by Ben himself with 35mm footage shot by Rodrigo. And, lost my AirPod. But you do it in such a way where I know, because I've seen some of the behind the scenes, that it's obviously all fake and everything. But when I first watched it, I really thought that it was real. And that was such a great way for you to bring this element of reality into this fantasy world. And I just wanted to connect that back to sort of like, did you find that there's any sort of opportunities for you to do that on News of the World?
I mean, not in that way, really, because obviously it's
mixed format,
1870. Right. I mean, nothing you could do that overtly. I didn't like Dariusz was saying. I didn't want the style of the editing to be, fighting the style of the way the film was shot, and also didn't want it to impose a style on something that didn't, that didn't really belong. So
totally,
the way I cut is dictated very much by what the material is, or what the nature of the screenplay is and the way it's being shot. So, I certainly wouldn't be a place where I would use, newsreel footage because, I mean, I guess our version of that was the newspapers themselves,
Sure.
But so we had that, but not really, in Argo is written in the screenplay, actually, that it was supposed to be, you were supposed to, the way it was originally written, you're supposed to see it, our film. And then when the guy jumps over the wall, then we cut around to a reverse, or jump over the wall. We were going to use the existing footage, the real footage from the real embassy takeover. And it looked really bad, the footage we got. And then Ben and Rodrigo, and then some of the extras had like 16mm cameras and 8mm cameras. They were all stuck in the crowd. So, and everybody thought it was real footage from the day. Like I answered that question a bunch, actually, for everybody. And then later in the film, there's a lot of newsreel footage. So that, like you say, it brings you into that. But they did such a great job of doing that stuff. So in the beginning sequence, we dropped the idea of using existing newsreel footage because we had our own. But then I totally bought it. Oh, really? Yeah. I mean,
completely, but didn't question any of it. I said, oh, that's
Oh.
great stock footage. Yeah.
oh, good. Yeah. I mean, it was some of the extras. They had these little 16, millimeter cameras, and they were just running around in the crowd grabbing stuff, and some of it was unusable, and a lot of it was good, and it added that extra, feeling of reality that that sort of brought you into the film in a way that we were able to continue that throughout the film, and it was a lot of it was written in, and some we added ourselves, but it's the thing I find with that kind of stuff is if the audience is in the moment, it doesn't matter that the aspect ratio changes. It doesn't matter that you're using a different film stock. It doesn't matter to go black and white. It doesn't matter because the audience is engrossed in what your story you're telling. You could ask them afterwards, what did you think when the size of the thing came in and went out? And they were like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't even notice that,
Completely agree with you, Bill.
So it's more about the storytelling than it is about like anything else. As the audience engaged, yes, then you're fine. You can do anything.
I completely agree, and I think a lot of people get stuck in the convention of like how to shoot a scene or how to approach it. Dariusz, I'm curious. What type of risks did you find that you could take in this specific project? And also, I want to bring about the idea that you're completely right. We are, as filmmakers, the bridge between the story and the audience. And it's up to us to decide whatever we want, as long as the audience, as long as we can be a good bridge, right? But in this specific project, I know you try to do a very contemporary and look to it. But did you take any risks?
The one risk I took, which was completely not a problem at all, it was when we put the wagon on this little not even low loader. It was just basically like a trailer that we pulled by a pickup truck, because we didn't have a proper camera car. My grip just built the speedway around the pickup truck, and that's also the same vehicle we used to pull the wagon for the dialogue scenes, and it was just like an ordinary trailer. It wasn't some kind of a film fancy thing, and because we had only axes were in the center, the whole thing was extremely wobbly and bumpy. And we kind of tested this, it's fine. And then we have this, the dialogue scenes going forever between two of them, and we all on the dirt roads and stuff. So poor guys are hand holding this stuff. And it was just, they were like going, man, this is not gonna work. This is not gonna work. I said, it will. And it's this whole thing is fully handheld on the bumpy road on the most unstable wagon ever. And it totally works, It totally works, makes it totally believable. And it could have been smoother, but why,
No.
Yeah.
And it's not offensive. It's not like it's not induced. It's not like I did it. So that was kind of thing I was debating. I mean, probably I was also trying to save my operators because it was pretty exhausting. Tom Hanks had a great line. He looked at them when we were switching the horse, and he looked at my operator and said, "Hey, the horses get the break." That was a classic line.
That's hilarious. William, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I mean,
Dariusz.
Other risks, again, pushing magic hour to the last minute, that's always a risky thing. Second unit, I'm always nervous about, but, I have to say one thing, that one of my operators that I've used throughout my whole career, I sent him to the second unit, and it was great because he was part of the A unit. And it's very good that it's the same person who understands me, what I'm doing, to translate the thing to second unit that can just get out of control quite easily, or just begin to make a separate movie. So collaboration of my operator became a second unit DP, and great stunt guy. It just was great. So that was another thing I was a bit nervous about, but that worked out great.
It makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference in my end because I often get second unit footage and it feels like it's from another movie.
Because Martin understood what, and I'm sure he talked to you too all the time, right, Martin?
Oh yeah, yeah.
No, he always just very meticulous. His Swiss brain was in
Terrific.
there.
Yeah, the previous podcast that I was a part of was between me and Rodrigo about me working as a second unit DP for Glorias. And I totally know what you're talking about because, there's one film that you're making. And when you have a lot of creative voices, you need to make sure that all the creative voices go to one place. We are running out of time, but before we finish, I wanted to end by talking a little bit more in general terms, because I think that film is a lot of what we're trying to do in Film Roundtable, or they're trying to do, is demystify the world of film and demystify sort of the people that are behind these great minds. And I know that, life has been tough to get where you guys have been. And I know this is a very general question, but to everyone who's trying to get into filmmaking or get into cinematography or editing, I'd love to end with sort of like hearing maybe your advice to people who are just starting out.
I'll let you go first.
Thanks for me.
My pleasure.
Well, I think it's just keep trying, and you just have to have a lot of patience and passion to, because it's going to be a lot of obstacles in the beginning. And it's just this classic catch-22. They're not going to give you a job until you have something to show. You have nothing to show because no one gave you a job. So, I mean, everyone is facing it. I had a great opportunity, beautiful story when I came to New York. I knew some people who were studying at Columbia University, and it was graduate film school, which was predominantly for writers. And Patty Chayefsky came and spoke, and the guy said, "Oh, and she's come, Patty Chayefsky speaking," and he was talking about this and that, and then the final thing is, he said, "Any questions?" So of course, young students come in and say, "How do you break into business?" And he had a great answer. He says, it's mostly for writers more than us, but he said, "Listen, if you make your career, if you have your big house in Beverly Hills and a pool and everything, just remember, come back to New York and take a subway." That was their advice. That was Patty Chayefsky's advice, which I think is quite beautiful, which is stay real. Stay real, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say stay patient. I always say this, perseverance, is if you want to really be an editor or whatever you want to be, it's there are going to be a lot of times where it doesn't happen for you, and you have to stay positive and persevere and keep trying in every avenue. And then, I mean, the great thing about technology right now is that, you can go out and shoot a movie on your iPhone, you can cut a movie on your iPhone. I mean, you can do all kinds of stuff like that. So, and those are just tools. So, you have to develop your skill as an editor. So start cutting stuff, that's the easy thing to do. And right now, when I started, it was, how am I going to cut something without having a job and some film in front of me and movieola and what have you. But now you can just do it at home on your laptop, and you can really, and then, what I always tell students about editing is watch a lot of movies, but start watching movies with the sound off. And you can feel the rhythm. You can really feel the rhythm of the editing and see why. You really get a sense of it that you don't get when you're just sitting there and letting it kind of wash over you. You want to look at films of the way they're edited or the way they're shot, and then you want to look at it, like I said, with the sound off, and you get a real sense of the musicality of it and the rhythms of it, and it's really, really helpful. It was really helpful for me when I first started.
I couldn't agree more. This is such a great trick. I've done this in my film school in Poland. We watched movies with a cinematographer with no sound.
Mm-hmm.
It was the best lessons I've ever had, because you just start seeing things that otherwise, that's a great. And I totally agree with you that technology is so liberating. So young generation you guys have it much easier. No excuses. Just keep going.
Yeah, because when I first started, people would say to me, "What do you want to be?" I said, "Well, maybe probably an editor." So, "Well, go edit stuff." And I'm like, "What?" I didn't, I didn't even have a desktop computer, let alone edit anything iMovie or something. So I was just, okay, well, how do I do that? And I couldn't. So I had to, learn by getting jobs and getting with the people who were nice to me. I mean, also, I looked for a mentor, and I was lucky enough to start working for Michael Kahn, who's Steven Spielberg's editor, and I worked for him for several years. And he mentored me and helped me in my career, and gave me a lot of confidence, telling me that I could, you don't know your talented, I know, so it was lucky for me to have somebody like that, because I didn't come from a movie business background. My father was in the delicatessen business. So for me to have somebody like that tell me I was good at something, really helped me. And it also helped me just logistically. He would recommend me for stuff, and recommending, a recommendation from him really meant a lot. So look for those mentors, people who can support you both in terms of getting you jobs and also making you better at your craft.
Well, I want to thank you both so much, really, for your time and for bearing with me. This is my first time moderating, but it really has been such an honor with both of you. And I really enjoyed the film, and I really admire both of you and your trajectory and your work. I also want to thank you so much to our listeners. I want to thank Maria Prieto for trusting me with this. I want to thank Aaron Weil, Doug Torres, Matthew Wolf, the rest of the Film Roundtable community and people. And please follow these artists. They're incredible, amazing, and maybe watch some of their films with the sound off. So thank you, guys. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye, Darius.
Thank you.